In this lesson, we're going to do something that you've probably done before 1,000 times, and that's trying to decide what thing we're going to buy. So whether it was a video game or a cell phone or whatever it was, you probably looked at several different options and said, which one do I actually want? Which one's going to better meet my needs or give me the best value? And I'm going to actually show you a method today that you can use. Now, I will point out that it has limitations, the method I'm going to use. It doesn't work well if there are too few or too many criteria. So for instance, if you're looking at a video game and there's only two versions of it, maybe you're looking at the regular version and the limited edition deluxe version. If there's only that one difference between them, then you probably don't need to use this method. You just look at the two games and the two prices and say, is it worth it for me to get the better one, or is it a better deal for me to get the cheaper one? Very straightforward, very simple to do. Likewise, if you're looking at something that has thousands of options, it may be a little tricky to use this method, although it still will work. It'll just take you time. Now, I'm going to try and point this out later, and if you're using this method that I'm going to show you and you're still not sure which one you should get, it probably means you're just not using it as completely as it should be. So what we're going to do in this one is I'm going to just basically start off with one example of how to look for information and then a couple examples, shorter examples of how to use the information to make your decisions. Now, I will also point out that one thing that this does not take into account that you might want to do is actually read reviews on certain products. So if you're trying to decide between three or four things, maybe you're looking for a new stereo for your house or a new television, you might want to read reviews and just find out if one of them is really highly recommended or if one of them has a lot of issues with it. And that may change your decision as well. So I tried to pick up something that was relatively modern. We're going to just see if we can compare some cell phones. And I will point out that unfortunately, because of the nature of this, um, even though these are fairly modern at the time I'm making this video, I'm not sure that will be the case next week. When they're on iPhone 28 or Google Pixel 15. So these ones are current right now, and if you're watching this video thinking, oh my God, these are all old, I apologize. They were what I had to work with, and I'm not going to remake the video constantly every time phones upgrade, because let's be honest, that happens almost on a daily basis. So the first thing I do is I just go through an ad for one of the phones I'm looking at. So in this case, I'm going to compare the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is the newest iPhone, the best version of it, and also the most expensive, along with a Google Pixel 6 and a Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. So you'll notice that two of the columns are filled out and one of them isn't, and that's because you're going to fill out that column in the notes that you can download below. And what I start by doing is just listing a whole bunch of the different criteria that I find when I look for the product. So you'll notice that down the left-hand side there, I've listed price, which is always going to be a factor in buying something. And then I just looked through it and said, what are all the different things it lists about these products? And I'm going to write down the numbers for them, or not necessarily numbers, but information for them. So for the iPhone Pro Max, the price was $1,550, not on sale. Oh, by the way, these are all unlocked phones. These are not tied to a specific deal or like plan. I noticed that it said it had a dual SIM card so that you could have two SIM cards in it if you wanted to actually be able to like call and receive calls for two different numbers. For most people, I don't think that's a big deal. If you're somebody who uses your phone for business, having your business and cell phone as one phone, but being able to take business calls and personal calls on the same phone is kind of cool. I do know some people that have to use two cell phones and they always complain that it's such a pain. The storage capacity, 128 gigabytes for the iPhone 13. The operating system is iOS 15. That might be something that matters to you. I know that I prefer iOS to Android, but again, that's just my personal preference. The service that they can receive, 5G. And by the way, what we're going to see is if it's the same for everything, then you can pretty much leave it off the list. But I put it on the list before I knew that it was going to be the same for everything. And I haven't actually done the one for Samsung Galaxy since you're doing it, so it may be the same. What we're really looking for is what are the differences between these products? The cable, the iPhone 13 uses a Lightning cable. The Google Pixel 6 uses a USB-C. I personally like the USB-C better. It's a more universal thing, whereas the Lightning is pretty much just Apple products. Headphone jacks, neither of them have it. Front camera, iPhone's a little bit better. Rear camera, um, it's a very long description of these. So the Google 6 seems to have a better rear camera. So if you're taking pictures of other people instead of yourself, um, if you want to do a wide angle instead of an ultra wide. But this is where you sometimes have to go into a little bit more detail. We're not going to do that here. We're going to kind of keep it simple. And then we have things like the display size, 6.7 inches versus 6.4 inches for the Google. Below that, I do have a link that you can use directly from the PDF you download to go to the Samsung phone. If not, you can just Google or go to the Best Buy website and type in Samsung Galaxy S20 FE and you'll find the phone or find the link just fine. So the link that you should get when you do this, let me bring it up, is right here. So that's the phone that we're looking at. It happens to be on sale at this moment, so maybe this will end up being our best deal. And then you can choose from, like for instance, different wireless carriers. I've chosen unlocked for all the phones because as soon as you introduce the carriers into this, then there's a whole nother thing to compare, and I don't really want to get into that. I just want to find out which physical phone is the best for me. Now, I will point out that this is a little bit of a bump in it. I'm comparing it despite the fact that they're sold out online and sold out in stores. So it's not even available if I did want it. But for the purposes of this lesson, I think we can use it just fine. So now what I do is I go down my list of things that I've listed for the other phones so far. First being price, so I can write down 650. And then I can start going down here and looking for more information. Now some of the information may be in the overview, but what I probably want to do is go down to more information. And you know what? Before I even read that, I'm going to scroll down and leave it a little further. And I'm going to click on details and specs. And the details and specs will give me quite a bit of information. So there it tells me the storage is 128 gigabytes. There may be times where as you're finding an additional product, so your second or third that you might be looking at, you find information that wasn't in the other two and you want to add it to your list. And you're welcome to do that. There may be something cool about it. So for instance, I didn't have memory expansion listed as one of my things because I started off with iPhones and iPhones don't have SD cards. But if having an SD card to expand the memory from the 128 gigabyte internal is meaning something to you, then you may want to list that as a new criteria. So just add it to the bottom of your list and write it down. And then if the others, you can find the information, great. And if not, that's cool too. Now, something I didn't get into on my list either was the RAM or the CPU details. I could have just as easily included them, but again, I had to stop somewhere for the purposes of the lesson. Basically, any of these things that's important to you, include in your list. And if it's not important to you, then don't bother including it in your list. But find a bunch of criteria and ideally criteria that are different. Again, now this one turns out to be 128 gigabytes of storage, which is the same as the other two, which means that there's no point in taking this into consideration because it doesn't matter what phone I get, it's going to be 128 gigabytes of storage. Now there are other models, so maybe you find the 256 gigabyte version of this, whatever. But if it changes from one thing to the next, include it. If it doesn't, probably leave it off because it doesn't have any impact on your decision. I also didn't include battery time on my other lists, which may be important to you. This is a 5G phone, as were the other two, so I could probably leave it off. Wi-Fi connectivity, they're all the same now, so I didn't bother putting it on my list in the first place. It does have wireless charging. It does have a Type-C cable connection, so I can put those on. It does not have a headphone jack. The other two didn't have them either. And then some information about the camera, which is actually giving way more detail than what I wrote down. I'm just trying to get a gist of which one is, kind of better. So I think I just put down, or you put down 32 megapixels for the front, and I think 12 megapixels for the back. The other information, screen size is there, etc., etc., etc. So fill in all that information. And then if you're missing anything, so I think when I went through and looked at this one, there were a few things that I couldn't figure out. One of them was the operating system. It doesn't actually say what the operating system of this is, although I'm pretty much sure that if I scroll up to the top, it's listed under unlocked Android phones, so it's going to be Android. Do I know which version? No. But if you want to Google it, just look up the actual like product on a different site. So you can probably go to the Samsung website and get any information that you might be missing. What else was missing when I looked for it? It didn't say whether it has dual SIM card or not, so I assume it does not. And I think the first time I went through, I couldn't find out if it charged wirelessly or not. So here's a feature that most people overlook. There's a lot of information on here. It may be here, you just missed it. So what I'm going to do is actually use Control F, and it'll bring up the search thing up here, and I typed in the word charging, and then I'm going to keep looking to see where the word charging appears. Oh, here we go. So we got some highlights there. It's got 25 watt super fast charging, fast wireless charging. Okay. So it does have wireless charging on it. So if you can't find the information when you read through the page, the first thing you can try is doing a search for one of the words to help you find it, just in case you missed it when you were reading. And the second one would be go to a different website, usually the product's website, and search for the information there. Or just Google it. Google, does the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE have wireless charging? And you'll probably find it. So not always will you find the information you're looking for in one place, but you can find it, whatever you're looking for if you do look for it. Okay, so that's the idea here. And again, I'm not going to fill in that last column for you. I'll let you pause the video now and fill it in yourself and basically see if you can find all the information on there. I've given you all the hints and tricks and most of the things I've actually said, but you can basically fill in that table pretty quickly. So we're going to actually use the method now that I was talking about, but we're going to use it on a different product because cell phones are actually one of the more complex things. There's a lot of options, a lot of different features that the cell phones can have, and it becomes kind of difficult to compare them. So I thought I'd pick something that's a little bit easier to work with for our first example here, and that's the features on an Xbox Series X versus an Xbox Series S. So these two new video game systems, or at least new at the time of this video, and see if we can compare them and figure out which one is best for our needs. So the method we're going to use is we're basically going to list all the information that we have the same way we did for the last one. Now in this one, I chose, I'll always choose price. But then I thought, okay, what are the things that are different between them? So I actually went not to the Best Buy website, but to the actual Microsoft website. And it showed the differences between them. The X has 1 terabyte drive. The S only has a 512 gigabyte drive. The X processor is 12 teraflops. The S processor is 4 teraflops. Now, if you're like me and you don't really know exactly what a teraflop is, that's okay. You've got a couple options. You can Google it, or you could just assume that whatever it is, it's 3 times better on the X, since it is actually a measurement. But again, up to you. Resolution, true 4K versus 1440p. Optical drive, so this is basically where you'd put in a disk. It takes 4K ultra high definition Blu-rays, so basically the new discs that it has. Now the S doesn't have an actual place to put discs. So that actually is one of the features that matters the most to me, at least personally. Is it backwards compatible? The X is, because it takes the old discs. It takes Xbox One, Xbox 360, Xbox discs. The Xbox Series S is not backwards compatible because it doesn't take those discs. Now you can do, or you can purchase older content digitally. That's a little different than backwards compatibility. That's just buying the software again. I have a lot of old discs. I have old video game systems, and I want to be able to play them on the new system. And now sometimes you can include this, or sometimes you may not choose not to. I put in the appearance. Do I like the way one of them looks over the other? And I put that in partially because I wanted to have pictures of both of them, but also partially because this list can have anything that matters to you on it. If it matters to you, put it down. Okay, so before we begin, I'm going to point out a couple of things that this system will quickly break down if it happens. And that's if there's a feature that you're looking for that you actually like, it's a must have, then there's no point in using this. If you're like, well, I need to have a disk drive, I need to have the ability to play discs on my system, well, then why are you using this method? The Xbox Series S does not do that. So don't bother using the method. It's a waste of your time. Likewise, if you're saying I have a budget of $400, I cannot spend any more than that, well, then there's no point in looking at the $600 system. So anytime there's a criteria that you cannot budge on, there's no point in including something that doesn't meet that criteria. All right, that said, here we have two systems, and I'll be honest, I very much want the Xbox Series X, but I'm thinking about actually getting the Series S, partially because it's available now. And I'm like, maybe it actually does meet most of my needs. Let's see. Okay, so you'll notice that beside each of the two lists of information, I have put an adjustment column. I just put adjust because it's shorter. And what we're going to do with this is very important to understand this method. It's not hard, but people tend to mess it up. What I want you to do is look across at the different things. So let's start off with storage. This one's a pretty easy one. We have a 1 terabyte, and the other one is 512 gigs, which is half a terabyte. What I want you to do is pretend that you have the ability to pay to upgrade one of these systems to the best one. So if I could buy an Xbox Series S, but I could pay a little extra and get that 512 gigabyte hard drive up to a terabyte, how much would it be worth to me? So it's always about trying to bring the lower ones up to the better one. So I don't know, half a terabyte going up to 1 terabyte, I think that's worth $40 to me. And you can put in whatever number you like for your criteria because sometimes things are super important to you and sometimes they aren't. So maybe you're someone who's thinking, I don't really care. I'm going to just plug in an external hard drive. It's cheap. So it means nothing to me to have this extra half terabyte. I've got a 5 terabyte I'm going to plug in. In which case, then maybe just say 20 bucks. Or maybe you really, really want to use the internal storage for playing games because you think it's faster. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't researched it. But if you think it's faster, and you're like, well, I'd pay 100 bucks to get that upgrade. Whatever it is, come up with your number. I think I said it was worth 40 bucks to upgrade, so I'm going to say plus 40 right there. I won't bother writing the dollar symbol or the plus because it's always plus and it's always dollars. Now, obviously, I don't put an adjustment beside the 1 terabyte because I'm not changing it. It's going to stay 1 terabyte. The processor, 12 teraflops versus 4 teraflops. How much would you pay to have this Series S upgraded to 12? Um, I think I would pay $100 for that extra power. So I'll put that in there. What about the resolution? True 4K versus 1440p. Now, I'm an old guy with poor eyesight, so I'll be honest, I don't know the difference between these. I do notice the difference between like regular like 720 and 1080, but anything over about 1080, I don't know, I don't really see a difference. So to me, it's not worth that much, but I'll say 10 bucks. I would pay 10 bucks if I could upgrade the resolution. For some of you who have really keen eyesight and really, really like that high definition, you might be able to, you might pay an extra 100 bucks or 150 bucks to get true 4K, but not for me. The optical drive. Now, I'm going to actually consider the optical drive and the backwards compatibility separately, despite the fact that they're kind of tied together. Um, do I really care whether or not my machine plays 4K discs? Um, I don't really buy 4K discs. I don't have any in my collection right now. I've got lots of Blu-rays, but I also just have a Blu-ray player, so I don't really need that. So it doesn't mean much to me, but I guess I'd pay 20 bucks for that. And then for backwards compatibility, wow. That's worth a lot to me because like I said, I've got a huge collection of Xbox 360 and Xbox One games. That I'm going to say is worth $200 to me. because it basically then acts like those other systems, which the new one doesn't do. Or sorry, the S doesn't do. Now, as far as appearance goes, which one do I like better? No, obviously, this is a complete opinion thing. I do kind of like that the Xbox Series S is slimmer and doesn't take up as much room. I don't know if I care that much about the color, but if I could get the weird block-shaped one on the left, the X, to look more like the S, I think I'd pay an extra $10 to get that little slimmer appearance. Oh, I'm not sure why I put the plus 10 there, but I did. Anyway, it's plus. It is always plus. So I would add $10 to that. Now here's what I do. I take a look at my original price, and then I do any of my adjustments, and I say, okay, the original for the X was 600, and I would pay $10 to upgrade it so it looks like the white one. So then it would cost me $610. Oh, sorry. I skipped one step there. I need to fill in the total adjustments, which in this case is just 10. So the adjusted price is 610. So basically, if I took that one and I could convince Microsoft to put it in the white case and be a little smaller, I would pay $610 for it. Now the other one, it has quite a few adjustments on there. I'm going to add up all of those, and I think that totals $370 in adjustments. And that's basically to take the Xbox Series S and make it so that it has all the capabilities of the Xbox Series X. And now if I take that and I compare it to the original price, that the original price was $380 plus add $370, that's $750. And now what I do is I say, okay, if I could make those upgrades to make the two systems identical, then the X would cost me $610 and the S would cost me $750. This one's the better deal. So that's the one I actually want to buy. Now, I had mentioned earlier that there is a certain time where you're going to look at this and say, despite what the number says, I still want the other one. That doesn't mean this system doesn't work. It means that there's something about the other one that you really like that you're not taking into account. So maybe instead of doing Xbox X versus S, you were doing this for Xbox Series X versus PlayStation 5. And at the end of it, you're like, you know what? The X still seems cheaper, but the PlayStation 5, I want more. Well, maybe what you should have taken into account as one of your criteria was game library or controller style or any other factor that you want to take into account. But if there's something that draws you towards one over the other, make sure you're listing it in there and put down what it's worth to you to get that. And then this method will work every time. So the times it doesn't work, it's because you're not being honest with yourself about what criteria are important to you and how much it's worth to you. For me, this just made my decision easy. To get the features I would want in a Series S, I would have to add too much money. So I really, for me, the better deal would be the Series X. That's the one I should buy. No question. All right, let's try this one more time with an item that you may not be as familiar with, but that's okay. We're going to try the method kind of on a generic item. And we're going to look at just getting a blender for the kitchen. So maybe we like our morning smoothies. We want to have some smoothies in the morning, so we're going to get a blender. Maybe you like cooking. I don't know. So I put 3 of them here. Again, I'm not trying to endorse a specific product here. I just had to choose something. So I chose some Ninja blenders. They seem to be common, pretty popular these days. And I chose 3 different models, the Nutra Ninja Pro for $100, the Ninja Professional Blender for $140, and the Ninja Supra Kitchen System for $190. So what I do is I always looked across the list. I've already filled in all the criteria that I could find that mattered to me at all. There are different appearances to these, they're different colors, but yeah, to me they weren't important, so I didn't include them. So what I'm going to do is look across at the different features and then just say, how much would I pay to upgrade the lower ones to the best one? So first one I have listed is watts. And this is basically how much energy it uses, but it's how much power it has. So the higher the number of watts, the more powerful the motor on it is. So the smallest one is 900, and then we have 1,000 and then 1,200. So 1,200 is the best. It will not get adjusted. We would just want to bring the bottom ones up. So how much would I pay to upgrade the motor on the first one so that it was 1,200 watts? Nothing else changes. Just make it into a 1,200 watt motor. And I don't know, I would pay like 30 bucks for that. How much would I pay to get the 1,000 to a 1,200? Well, 1,000's better than 900, but I'd maybe pay 20 bucks. So maybe about 10 bucks per 100 watts. Okay, does it come with a pitcher? So a pitcher, if you look at the picture at the top, this is the pitcher, not to be confused with a baseball pitcher. So it would be used for mixing, like if you were mixing drinks for 5 people or something like that, um, or a whole bunch of stuff, that would be great. I want mine for smoothies, so the pitcher's worth something to me to have, but I don't know if it's worth a lot. I'm going to say to have a pitcher. Now, first of all, 2 of them come with a 72-ounce pitcher, the same size, and only the small one doesn't come with one. But the pitcher's not super important to me, so I would pay $15 to add the pitcher to it. And maybe you can add a pitcher to it, but I'm guessing it would cost more than 15. But to me, I would only pay 15 bucks for it. Now, travel cups, those are these things down here. They're where you blend in the cup and then drink directly from the cup. I find that super convenient, so that I don't have to pour it, because every time you pour from the pitcher into a cup, you lose like all the stuff that sticks to the sides, and you dirty one more thing that you have to clean. And nah, I prefer the travel cups immensely. So the cheaper one, I should say, it's not really smaller, but the cheaper one comes with 2 cups, an 18-ounce and a 24-ounce. The professional one in the middle doesn't come with travel cups. And the one at the end comes with 2 cups. Both of them are 16 ounces. So now I could look at that and say, which one of those is the best? I think it's the first one, the 16 or the 18 ounce and the 24 ounce. But you could argue that you would rather have the 16 ounces anyway, that's the size that you're going to drink from, and the 24 is maybe a little too big. So if you say, well, I don't know, to me they're the same, I'm not going to adjust them then. But what I would do is I would say, how much more would I pay for travel cups for the middle one? Because I do want travel cups, at least one, preferably 2. So I'm going to say, that's really what I wanted this. I'd pay 20 bucks for each cup. So I'd pay 40 bucks to upgrade this thing to 2 cups. All right, next part, food processor. That's this part here. And that's the thing that you use basically, like I don't use a food processor much because I'm not much of a chef, but it's the thing you use to like chop and dice stuff, like I don't know, putting carrots and make them into little pieces. I don't use that a whole lot. The big one comes with a 64-ounce tub thing there. The others don't come with one at all. I would pay, I don't know, 20 bucks for that processor in case I need it for when I start cooking something later. So again, I'm going to upgrade the lower 2 to the highest to say, okay, if all of them came with a 64-ounce cup, the lower 2 I would add 20 bucks to. And the dough blade. So I actually know this because my girlfriend likes to cook and she likes to bake. So that's actually this piece right here. And it's a special blade that goes in, and basically it allows you to make dough. So you put flour and eggs and salt and stuff in the blender and then turn it on, and it kneads it into dough for you. Now, I happen to be a pretty big fan of pizza, and pizza dough I find making by hand is a little bit tedious. So the best one already comes with that dough blade included. How much more would I pay to have that dough blade included with the other 2? And I guess 20 bucks. I'd pay 20 bucks so that I can make pizza dough. And I'm sure I could probably use it for some cookies too, because no one ever complains about cookies. Now the next feature is, does it make whole fruit smoothies? So this is where you just throw in the whole apple and it just blends the crap out of it until it's just all pulp. By the way, I wouldn't do that anyway. The seeds always just kind of taste funny. But anyway, it does make smoothies. But hey, if I look across, all 3 of them do this. So there's no point in this even being on the list. I'm just going to cross that out. And sometimes you don't know that's going to happen when you start looking at different models. It just turns out to happen. So I put that one on there on purpose, knowing that all three of them had it. But it's not going to change my decision making since it's the same for all of them. Now, does it puree? So basically, does it make things into like baby food, like mush? The Ninja Pro, the cheap one, doesn't. The other two do. I don't know. I don't really puree anything, so I'm going to say it's only worth $5 to upgrade. If it's truly worth nothing to you, you can put 0 down. Um, but be honest with yourself. If you could get it to have an extra feature for $5 more, would you take it? If you would, then say $5 more. All right, recipe guide. Does it come with a recipe guide? The first two do. The big one, ironically, does not. Um, Here's the thing. I know how to make a smoothie. I know how to use the internet. This one I'm legitimately going to put down a 0. That little guide that shows me like, put some milk and fruit into a blender to make your smoothie means 0 to me. I'll just Google it. So I'm not going to include that. Oh, I just realized I put that in the wrong spot. That should go there. Okay, and that was our last criteria. So if I go down and add up the total adjustments, I'll do the last one first because it's easy. There are no adjustments, which makes sense because it already has kind of the best of everything. It's the most expensive one to begin with. The first one, I'm adding $30, $45, $55, $65, $75, $85, $90 in adjustments. And the middle one, I'm adding $20, $60, $70, $80, $90, $100 in adjustments. So if I do that, what would the price be now that I've made all three of these blenders into the same blender, essentially? So if I do this, the first one's $190. The second one's 140 plus 100 is $240. And the last one is the $190. Oh, so now, and I did not intend for this to happen, I've come to an exact tie. I've come to an exact tie. So between the first one and the last one. So then I have to ask myself, are there any other criterias I want to take into account? Maybe the way it looks. Maybe one of them is prettier than the other one. Maybe one of them is smaller and takes up less counter space than the other one, which I'm pretty sure is true with the small one. And maybe that's worth something to me. So what I can do is if I'm still having a hard time, I can think about what other criterias are different between them that might make a difference to me. And it could come down to something as simple as I just like the way this one looks a little better. Anything to help you make your decision. But hopefully by now you kind of get the idea of how this works. Listing criterias that are important to you. List adjustment values that you would pay to upgrade from the lower ones to the highest one. And then do the adjusted price and figure out which one is the best deal based on the adjusted prices. So it's that one or that one, but not that one. All right, so that's it for the method. Now there is no direct homework for this one. Although, well, hold on one sec. There is no direct homework for this one. However, we are going to do an assignment on it where you're going to have a product and you're going to choose several criteria and you're basically going to set up a chart just like this one, except that you're choosing the criteria, you're filling in the values for those criteria, and then you're going to figure out the adjusted price and make a decision based on which one you think is best. Anyway, we'll take a look at that in the next class, and today that's it. Or actually, we might look at it now since this is not going to take a full period. Anyway, let me know if you're having trouble with this idea. It is a little bit weird for some people, so I completely get if you're struggling with it a bit. But once you get it, it actually is fairly effective. All right, we'll see you next time.